So, who do you expect to win this game? Do you know the players?
I don't really know. I'd say that they all have a very good chance. I don't really know anything about Palmar. I think sorry. I think I've seen them in one game maybe, but that's probably not enough to tell anything.
I think J Bob the Mighty is pretty strong, or he seems to be decent. He at least knows about like the most basic stuff, like adjacency, and seems to be investing pretty good. Almin I've seen a lot of. Doesn't seem to be like the strongest, but is always there to be counted for. So me myself, possibly one of them.
Macros, I feel like maybe haven't been cited as much, but I've played a bunch of 1v1 against him. He should not be considered a non-threat.
Yeah, I'm looking at the score table here, and he's sitting on the first place together with Fox placing 2 victories.
Yeah, pretty nice. Yeah, so this is an interesting map because I don't see a lot of silicon. Like all of it is in the south. Actually, there's a lot of silicon. Okay, never mind. But yeah, glass will be really important.
A scientific HQ has been upgraded.
So 2 scientific, 1 scavenger, and 1 expansive. 2 scientific. That's quite a bit, isn't it?
But that's yeah, they're both very excuse me. They're both very reasonable scientists. I'll say that Jim Bob has a little bit insufficient steel, I would say. Like that might hurt him in the long run.
Jim Bob, yeah?
Yeah. And on the other hand, Palmar has good steel and had really good water, but is far away from silicon, and silicon is going to be just super important. Then again,
I don't like Palmer's spawn myself, to be honest.
Really?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not that experienced, obviously, but it seems to me there's not a lot of rare resources up there. It's like it seems like you're stuck with the basics, and if the life support is strong and off-hold is strong, then you're fine. But it's a bit of a gamble, I feel like.
Yeah, I feel like life support is going to be really good though. Like food starts double priced, that's going to carry you for a while. Although he really needs to push into those 3 farms as soon as he can. What I hadn't realized is that he is not actually using the scientific steel mills. He also is running on 2 steel mills with just an iron tile, which is actually a reasonable play, but there is definitely something to be said about just going expansive over there or something.
Iron price is pretty low though, and I don't see it becoming any higher because Elman, he's producing what he's using, it seems like, more or less. And we have Jim Bob, who just skips that entirely. So if he sells that directly, I think he's going to crash it pretty bad.
Yeah, iron is generally not going to matter a lot because yeah, basically the only one who should in theory care about iron is Elman, and he's definitely producing enough.
What do you think about Macro's early transition into glass kilns? I'm just going to say glass.
That's a strong play. He has access to silicon. He got a silicon quarry, and he needs silicon to upgrade. And silicon is going to be having a lot of pressure because there are no robots and the colony is Chinese.
I really like his play, I have to say, because he's already invested into glass and chems, and now that food is dropping and oxygen and fuel isn't that high quite yet, he's in a pretty prime situation, and he also have the water close to him. He can transition into that later.
He's pretty well set up. What I don't like, perhaps, about him is that he invested into a 3rd carbon quarry. That just feels a little bit excessive at this stage.
Yeah, but then again, it just boosts his production and he can transition out. I mean, I don't say it's a beautiful play, but I think it works out.
It's definitely it's a pretty fairly minor complaint that I'm having. Also, he actually can push to HQ level 4, and he's noticeably ahead of everyone else.
Yeah, it has to be said, those 3 is a big commitment, but they're very close to his base. So to transition out, wouldn't be so cost-wise in terms of fuel. Like,
Yeah, definitely. And judging by the price of actual carbon and the fact that he was in cams and he was consuming a part of those part of his carbon, I guess I'm just. I guess my complaint isn't as valid.
A scientific HQ has been upgraded.
I think Palmer's spawn is or found is starting to show us a bit slow and bad as I expected. Because now you see he's overproducing food, crashing all life support, and I don't feel like he's in a prime spot at the moment to be frank with you.
Yeah, I don't agree with pushing into more food. I think you didn't need this fifth tile. You need to instead go into reactors because well, reactors at the time were not as contested as they are right now, and they're pretty good. And the food is just going to crash eventually. And it's definitely the
I would
case.
even say it's crashed already.
Well, I mean, he's a scientist, so he doesn't care about the watering, but it's still okay. But yeah, it's one of the lowest prices of the sort of good quote-unquote resources.
Yeah, but at this rate, you're better off just pumping water and selling it.
Yeah, and now he's going for an all-out reactor transition, which again, that's overcommitment. You can stay in 2 farms. Food still makes money, but yeah, this is a little too much. But it's definitely the case for both Jim Bob and Palmer is that they desperately need teleportation. Like, whoever gets teleportation out of them is going to fix all of his problems with the territory.
Mm-hmm. To me, it seems like Macro is continuing on playing this strong. As we talked about earlier, it seems like he's grabbed the water now, transitioning over to Reactor, which Palmer is not crash. Oh, he is crashing it now, so he might want to jump into food again, if you ask me, because that market is going to crash just like that. But still, I think Macro's got a very strong early game. We'll see if he can manage to push that over to Off-World. No, maybe not so strong. We'll see.
Off-roads are not good, actually. Oh wow, that's
Yeah, it seemed very, very bad. So that's
yeah,
why I ate my words there.
that is a very special off-road off-road market. Like it's terrible.
But then again, if this game drags out to Soul 10 and such, then it is going to be worth it. So
Eventually, it's going to be worth something, but you definitely don't want to start doing it early because there's dynamites, there's EMPs. Well, actually, there's no goon poppers, so it's not going to be too bad. But still, if you just build an off-road right here, it's not going to pay off, and instead you're just going to show everybody that clearly you are the leader and everyone should attack you. I will say though that we have been ignoring Elman a little bit, and he got to HQ level 5, and he's an expansive player, so now is the point in the game when he is going to start shining, because he has all those extra claims, and he's just going to make a lot of money, and it's going to be a bit of a challenge, I think, for Macros to keep up with Elman at this point.
yeah, for every resource Macro is producing, like you can make an argument is a good decision. Elman is producing too, so he's basically just getting more of everything. So especially if Offworld stays low, then he's just in a prime situation.
Yeah, and the question becomes, if off-worlds are bad, what is your late game strategy? What advanced buildings do you want to do? And Macros has identified that a Pleasure Dome will not be bad. If there's an expansive, there's a scavenger, it's going to be okay. Alman, on the other hand, has identified that if off-world is terrible, then on-world should be the thing to concentrate, and he's going for a optimization center.
Very good choice. But so is Jim Bob and Palmer.
Yeah.
Agreeing on that one.
The problem for both of them is that Jim Bob got teleportation, so he's the one who got the good territory, and at this point Palmer... yeah, he's just going to have a hard time, I think. Also, he has quite a bit of debt and doesn't have any power on, and power is still very relevant. It never really got out of control, but it's also never crashed. So.
Ooh, I like that. It doesn't only have teleportation, but also carbon scrubbing, so you can basically put those chems or whatever anywhere, and he can just ignore the carbon price, which is significant at this point in time.
Yeah, for Jim Bob, the teleportation is really important for silicon-based production. So glass, and he can build electronics on the next HQ way away from the base.
Has to be said though, I'm starting to like Elman more and more. He's sitting on 130k in cash and resources and has secured his stock. Like Macro can match him in terms of cash and resources, but now that he's buying into his stock, he's not.
Yeah, this is definitely where the expansive is going to start shining. I want to say I wasn't really keeping good track of Black Market, but I want to say that it was in Macro's interest to try to slow Elman down as much as he could, as early as he could. Like he's freezing him out pretty constantly at this point, but at this point is, I don't want to say that it's too late, but I guess it's just a little bit too late. Like it's too late in a sense that it could have been much better to do it earlier, but it's still a very good play.
I really don't like Elman's decision to go to carbons, especially since Macros is sitting on 3, and with that is actually storing 1.4k in his storage. So that price, I mean, if it goes down, that basically almost means free off-roads for Macros, but also the price is going to drop.
Well, with 3 carbon tiles, he shouldn't have a very hard time transitioning into off-roads in the first place, but yeah, I don't agree with grabbing 2 of them. I think just a medium tile should be enough for carbon there.
Mm-hmm.
Interestingly enough, yeah, one thing I don't like about what Macros is doing is that he doesn't have nearly as many claims as Elman, so he really needs those optimizations to make every single claim count. And in the long run, the 2 silicon quarries are probably not also very good, because that's one claim that could be spent much better on like as a cam tile.
Yeah, I would much rather like to see some sort of food commitment from Elman rather than the heavy carbon. And we do see he's actually having a bit of a depth issue at this point in time, sitting on 126k depth, and is almost touching in on D there.
It's looking like he wants to go for an off-road, based on the... well, I'm not sure, but maybe. He definitely does. Like, I want to say that if off-roads are this bad, you really need some kind of a plan to push ahead of your opponent. So, just a single optimization center is probably not enough. Just a single pleasure dome, which, well, thanks to virtual reality, is really good now. But like, I want to see more. Like, we're seeing optimization now. That's definitely a great play. I almost want to say that maybe building that off-road is going to be a good play, but again, that's just probably a little too risky at this stage still.
Mm-hmm. But do you see players are starting to stack up on glass? To me, that seems like a sign that they all are starting to think about off-road.
Yeah, well, some of them are just producing glass, but yeah, Elman has 108, but he doesn't seem to actually be building it, so I'm a little confused by that. Maybe he also wants to just wait for the BM items to get just a little bit more expensive before committing.
Mm-hmm. I'm very much surprised not more of them have committed into electronics, as it seems like chems and glass is starting to crash, and people are starting to go into off-road quite soon. And since it's something it's not being produced enough of, we're likely going to see the price rise. Yeah. But then again, as I see that Palmer is building electronics, and so is Elman. So
you can see that Palmer is kind of catching up, but he's still pretty far away from everybody else. And his starter is just not so good. He has to spend 3 units of water on his production, the scientist. It's a lot of water.
It has to be said too, though, Job Bob, he's suddenly finding himself in quite a good situation as life support is rising, and he's sitting on a lot of water, and with that, 4 electronics reactors and 3 food. It's a lot of income, and it's also where the off-road is heading as usual in oxygen. But also, you could make an argument that if food is crashing, it's going to be the thing to sell.
Yeah, we're late enough into the game when off-roads are finally going to be kind of good.
Yeah, and Jim Bob is the first one to build off-road. Not whole. What is it called again? Like hologrammed.
Yeah, there are no
Is-
holograms, so
I would like to see a market with a hologram. That would make me happy because that would go for so much.
yeah, we've had all 3 previous rounds in Group B to have with holograms, so I think so at least. It definitely seems to be a slower game because of how slowly the off-roads are getting there.
Oh, Goonies popped that off-road. But
Yeah.
still, like, I do see Jim is now sitting on 2 dynamites, which is now at 50k. So I think that he's in a really good slot now to spot 2 counter opponents.
Yeah, it finally reached the point when the dynamites are really expensive and when everyone should be moving to off-roads. And hilariously, both scientists who were pretty much behind the whole game are the first people to get into off-roads.
Yeah, Palmer is suddenly not looking as bad as it looked like in the early game. So as we saw that life support rising again, that gave him an opportunity, even though he misplayed very, very much early game. Where is that off-roll, by the way? Can't
For
find
Palmer, it's like right behind his
it. Oh,
HQ.
there it is, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, in the base. Yeah, it seems to be hidden by the base. Pretty smart.
Yeah, it will be more obvious once it's built. Like
But
those
like
things
now,
tend to stick out pretty obvious.
if you're just scouting over fast, not having a lot of time, you're not going to see that one right now. Then again, you do see the sign, of course. Probably wrong. Oh, we do see some action though. Macro going into Jim Bob.
Yeah, that's
What do you think about that mood?
I want to say it's a little bit early because you see everyone is building off-roads, and hilariously, Macro is actually the person who is in the best position to get off-roads because he's the one who got thinking machines. So he could have maybe afforded to go off-roads a little bit earlier than everyone else. Instead, he just opted not to because he decided that off-roads are too bad.
Yeah, I feel like this is not panning out the way Macros wanted to, because he to me it doesn't seem like it's set up for late game in the same way as Jim the Bob is with 2 off-roads.
Yeah.
So just to buy into Jim the Bob makes him a target. It's not necessarily that good for him, I would say.
Yeah, Jim Bob is doing exactly what I want someone to do. Like Macros has an advantage right now. He secured the stock. He has a bit more cash. He's more expensive to buy into because he got all that stock. But Jim Bob has 2 off-roads. Then Jim Bob has 2 optimization centers. Actually 3. So that's a heavy commitment. Jim Bob has a hacker array which he's going to try to put to use, which is a little bit questionable because Palmer also is making steel. But it's actually, it seems to be paying off for now. So he's doing exactly what I said. You can't rely on just the off-roads in this game because they're not that great. But so you need a lot of different sources of cash, and he committed to 3 different advanced buildings, and also he had a bunch of patents from earlier. So that's a really strong late game plan for him. Now I don't agree with buying into Elman though.
Jim the Bob sitting on 4 optimization centers. To me, that seems very extreme.
It is a bit extreme.
The chems is so cheap too, though.
Actually, he doesn't. He's sitting on 3 only because one of them is a hologram. No, it isn't. Wait a moment. Oh, he moved out of hacker array. It's interesting.
But I can't help to not think that all this seemed to play out in Macro's favor. Macro's buying into Jim Bob buying into Elmin. If Macros can buy out Jim Bob, that's put him in such a good situation.
I honestly hope that Jim Bob is going to change his mind and just go for Macros. You have to get that stock back. Because
yeah, I think Jim Bob could do it too if he really tries to.
Yeah, he realized that he's going for it because Macros finally has an off-world going. So if you just let him be, then he's going to catch up.
Yeah, I this is hard though. His Macros is already at 200k cash and resources, and he just need 374k. So it's halfway there. So Jim Bob a little bit too late, it seems to me.
Yeah, but then again, like I mentioned, he's a little better set up for the late game. Also, one thing I want to point out of Macros is that he went for thinking machines, and then he built both of his off-worlds away from the base.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's not really an optimal move. Like, it basically means that his thinking machines are essentially a waste of cams way back when.
But I don't understand what he's doing, because he's sitting on 500k, and he can start buying into Micro, raising his own stock price, making it harder to buy him out himself. But he's not, you know? And with that, he's finding himself in quite a bit of a dangerous situation.
Yeah, definitely.
If he'd done that investment earlier, I feel like he would have raised his stock price significantly, and with that, could rely on his off-world trading companies for longer and possibly won in. Finally, he's doing what we asked for, though.
One argument maybe is that he's really afraid of Elman, because while all of this is happening, both Elman and Palmer are basically having their chance to get back into the game, especially Elman. And he might be afraid that if he commits to the stock early, Elman might finish the buy, but that's not really a strong argument.
I don't know. It's a good idea, I guess. But then again, Jim Bob now.
Interestingly,
He's going to be bought out, isn't he?
Yeah. Oh yeah, Macros managed to catch up rapidly. Yeah, the off-world.
Now I can click it.
Well, he would need to cancel launches probably.
Yeah, but that's worth it.
Yeah, but at the same time, you might as well finish launches if you think that your opponent is not going to have the cash. Before you, yeah, Jim Bob is selling out.
Okay.
I'm not sure.
Fair enough.
What went wrong?
Elman doing immediately a move, yeah.
I want to say that he was sitting on his resources also, Jim Bob that is. Like he did that steel hack, which kind of worked out, and then he was sitting on the steel. And I wonder if Palmer managed to get a bunch of steel in. Because he was producing it, so maybe Jim Bob may have lost a bit of money that way.
Our methods continue to improve.
Palmer, though, finding himself sitting on the sideline.
Also,
like, possibly the best he could have done, I feel like, is to try and buy into a significant share of Macros before Elman did so, and just hope that Elman doesn't have the money to buy him out quite yet.
Yeah, well, at this point they have to stop Macros. But one more thing I'll say about Jim Bob and why he lost is because he was sitting on 4 black market items. He had 2 EMPs and 2 dynamites, and he never used them. Like, you definitely could have attacked both of Macros's off-worlds, and if you're suspicious that they might be goon, they're spies. So I feel like he definitely misplayed the end there pretty sadly.
Yeah, another thing we can mark is the fact that he had 4 of these optimization centers, and that does sound great, right? You sit with 4 optimization centers on hand, but then again, what resources are you producing? Because 4 of your claims is going towards optimization centers, so what you are optimizing is something you're not producing necessarily so much of.
True. I actually liked the aggressive optimization center play, but I think he overstayed in that play. He overcommitted to it. Like, because he had an optimization center by the colony, which is very efficient. So at one point he could have just scrapped the other 2 or 3 and moved into normal production and just keep the one running.
And if you have 2 off-roads, 4 optimization centers, that's 6 of your claims, right?
Well, yeah, but off-roads do make money, so...
Yeah, of course, that has to be said. But then again, what you're optimizing, you're not necessarily producing so much of. Oh, look at this though. Jim Bob is making very significant amount of money for macros. I feel like that's what actually gives him the edge against Elmin.
Absolutely. I mean, he's got an amazing subsidiary. He is actually in kind of a better spot, like just based on his HQ himself, because he has 2 offers. He has an amazing pleasure dome, which started out as like a good pleasure dome, and now it's absolutely amazing, and no one ever managed to contest it.
I feel like Elmin just ended up sitting on the sideline a bit, keeping the bench warm, because he was the one with the initiative before the buying started. And when he saw Macros and Jim Bob starting to buy into each other, he just was stranded there. And eventually, whoever bought out the other one would have a massive influx of dividend revenue. So maybe the right move could have been to buy into Palmer, for instance, and try and get a subsidy himself.
Usually that's correct. That's the way to go. But in a way, it kind of makes sense that it's not as strong of a play, because Palmer is just very expensive and very difficult. He had himself fully defended by then. And it's... then again, I don't know, it's hard to say. I guess you had to. You didn't really have a different option at that point. Because it's very
I'm
hard
not saying
to...
it's a good situation, but you got to make the best out of what you have, yeah?
Yeah, true. Yeah, at this point it's impossible to stop Macros. He has all of his stock. At this point, actually Palmer has a lot of money, but he has nowhere enough. He needs another 1,500,000.
This is very interesting though, because macros, this gives him a score of 3. And looking at the chart now, Fox placing himself won his games, and both of them is sitting on 3. So it all comes down to the last round. Which one of them is going to manage to win? Yeah.
Yeah. Just a little sort of finesse thing for Macros is to sell his own, like two of his shares, just get those 200k and finish the game quicker, because there's no way Palmer is going to make enough to finish the buy.
It is an excellent point, but then again, it has to be said, it actually doesn't matter.
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
But it's just cleaner. Like, imagine a situation where you manage to click 1 time too many, yeah? And suddenly you're being bought out. That would be hilarious.
Thankfully, there's a delay, so you should probably not just mash the button without thinking.
Yeah, but you can just sell out now. So I agree with you. And it's a nice move to automate for when the situation where it actually does matter. GG.
Alright, so Macros takes yet another game. I don't think anyone expected that.
So we did criticize. Was it Bob's decision to go into Macros early? Seemed like the domino that started the chain of events that led to Macros winning.
I don't really know. I feel like Jim Bob and Macros were doing fine. I generally don't feel like the stock market was bad. Like, it wasn't that badly played. I feel like Jim Bob didn't go for Macros in time. Like, he should have done it a bit earlier. He had no reason to sit on his cash, essentially. Like, if you can't invest your cash to make more cash, then there's also no reason to just sit on it. You can buy some stock.
Yeah, that's true. Then again, like, creds to Macros who managed to go that early, that late into off-road, still managed to buy off Jim Bob, and with that dividend revenue, buy off the rest. I think that was surprising. I didn't really see it coming myself when
I'll
he was
point-
that late into off-road.
I'll point out that his entertainment revenue from that Pleasure Dome is over half of what his off-roads made.
Yeah, I was actually going to mention that because that one was sitting on 373 for almost the entirety of that game, which was what kept him stable on a rough time. I feel like now we actually have the graphs to support that. 370, yeah. Whoa,
I'm a little surprised
sexy.
that Palmer made the most of Bond. That's a little unexpected. But
Well,
I
look at
guess
the
that's because he
off-road.
stayed in the game the longest. He was bought up the last, so yeah, that makes sense. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And off-road market, even though it's quite a bit of a long game, nobody managed to cross 1,000K, which says a lot. It wasn't the most juicy market. The entertainment revenue, one of those almost made as much. Yeah.
Yeah, it just started out really bad. Then in the end, it does matter. So
Ooh, Macros made almost 200K on power.
yeah, that's another interesting point because power never really spiked this game, but in part because players went for it early, and Macros just had a very steady source of power. He did have those two beautiful wind turbines with superconductor, which were keeping him a lot of power, and then he was able to transition them.
It's a beautiful situation to find yourself in because it never spikes, never draw attention to itself. So you can just stay steady and you can just keep harvesting those sweet, sweet money.
Yeah, then again, he wasn't really making much money on it, if at all, because he was in debt. Um,
Oh, he was?
relatively,
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
he had quite a bit of debt. I think because he ignored life support like at various points in the game, so he never really was in a position to make a lot of cash from power.
Yeah, but then again, that allowed him to play sloppy in terms of life support, etc. You just have a steady flow. Could go for more risky plays with like more advanced resources. So this is just a good situation to find yourself in, even though it's not like directly power money.
Yeah, somehow with two scientists, like no resources ever spiked too much, and like Onward was good, but there was nothing particularly clever that anyone could have done with it. So it all came down to the advanced buildings at the end.
Yeah. So many spies being used though. Is that late game? Must be. Yeah. To see where those goon squads are.
Yeah, like no holograms, but still a lot of